this bit. Good to go. And then I will start to fire some of my questions, and then we'll keep a close eye on the chat. So if there's other questions that you have, or anything that comes up in response to what the panel is sharing, please don't hesitate to chip in your questions, and myself and I will keep a close eye out. So we've got our panelists assembled. So first question I'm going to ask to all of you. The first question is very simply, what do you do currently? So kind of introduce yourselves, and how good a balance do you feel you have at the moment between love, and by love we're kind of thinking about kind of meaning, passion, purpose, and kind of financial reward. I'm just going to kind of go round as I see you. Zara, you're first on my screen. Would you be happy to go first?
Sure. So my name is Zara. I'm currently a compliance executive at South Bank Investment Research. It's an investment research company giving investment advice to different types of investors. I'm actually also a Queen Mary alumni. I graduated in 2022 with a degree in law. And I was job hunting for a while, trying to find that balance between love and money, something that I valued, but also put money and food on the table as well. Would I say that I found that currently? I would say possibly not, because in the beginning, I definitely felt that I was contributing to the regular norms of society instead of giving back in the way that I wanted to. But at the same time, I definitely decided early on that my outside life would be more fruitful. So for example, doing things like this, mentoring as well, giving back to the community, helping in my own way. So it's definitely something that I would encourage other people to think about, that your first job might not always be the job that you'll be in for the rest of your life, but to just take bits and pieces as you go along.
Yeah, thanks very much, Zara. And I think one of the reasons we're really excited to have you included in this panel is I think there can sometimes be a presumption that the job has to be the be all and end all. But what I loved about what I'd understood about the way you were working things is that you were effectively creating a bit of a portfolio for yourself, where you were using your skills in different ways. Some of them were, paying the bills, but others were ways to kind of give back. So I love that the way you're kind of thinking about that from a really early stage in your career. So really great to have you. Tarun, you're next on my screen.
Hi everyone, I'm Tarun. I'm a partner at Lewis Silkin, which is a large commercial law firm in the UK and internationally. I think I'm partly on this panel just to be a bit different to everyone else. So I'm probably the poster child of the opposite of this topic in terms of being a partner in a large commercial law firm. But what I do focus on... Someone is going on an exciting journey on the tube. I wish I was doing the same, but I'm not. What I do in my practice is I'm an employment lawyer. So actually, in the grand scheme of the big and scary world of corporate law, it's actually very tangible, very real. It has a real impact on people.
Sorry, Taryn, I think we've just lost you.
I've been unmuted.
Excellent. Sorry, I don't know where you lost me, but the point I was making was, as an employment lawyer, I'm able to have quite, I hope, a positive impact on the world. And while a lot of the time I am acting for corporates or large companies and transactions, and in a former life, I was the global head of employment law and commercial litigation at Deliveroo for 4 years. So I've spent time within a business as well as within a law firm. Actually, a lot of what I can do is give advice to individuals. I do a lot of pro bono work where together with students from various universities and law schools, we will give advice at legal advice clinics, helping members of the public, and you're able to sort of utilize that knowledge for the wider social good, as well as some of the work that's along the lines of this talk and that Zara was talking about in terms of giving something back from my broader life experience. So I suppose the short summary of why I'm here is, I think it's great to have a portfolio career and have a wide variety of things that you're involved in, but you can also get that balance within more traditional careers and sectors as well, as long as you really focus your time and effort on those opportunities.
Yeah, thanks, Ryan. And perhaps we can draw out a little more around what those are later in the conversation. But it's just to reassure, it's no accident that you're here. We know that we certainly see a lot of law students who are kind of I guess sort of a bit sort of torn between the work that they think they ought to do and the work they'd really want to do, and being more creative about how you can kind of balance those things and maybe still do sort of commercial work, I think was one of the reasons we really wanted to have your perspective on things. So no accident, you're kind of with us. Masruba, you're next.
Hi everyone, it's really nice to be here. My name is Masruba Tasnim. I work at Havas, which is an advertising and media agency. The role that I'm in is diversity, equity and inclusion partner. And I think throughout my career, I should say I graduated several years ago from Goldsmiths, and I studied sociology. So I think from then on, that kind of set my path into I'm going to be in a role, or I would imagine that I'm consciously going to be in a role that is impact-led, driven around kind of people and purpose, and that has been the case throughout my career. So I think before diversity, equity and inclusion, which I've worked within several different industries, I've always had a focus on where I can frame the role around having an impact on the most amount of people, or those marginalized, or those from diverse backgrounds. And fortunately, it's gone in a positive sense, but there've been kind of challenges along the way, which I'm sure I'll speak to a little bit later on. But I think across the board for the whole topic of the panel today, it is kind of having that balance and making sure that you are still feeling fulfilled, even though sometimes you do have to sell your soul a little bit, but making sure you can come back from selling your soul as well.
Yeah, look forward to hearing more about selling yourself. But that could be fun, who knows? Bisola, yeah, you're next.
Good afternoon, everyone. Yeah, it's really nice to be here as well. I'm a creative brand marketing and comms consultant. I also am a founder of a community organisation called Safe House, which is we host workshops, projects and events that support the development of young people, particularly wanting to get into the creative industry, but also some of our projects and events are around like life enhancing skills. So it may lean into mental health and well-being, exercise, how young people and across generations actually. So I'm from Hackney, born and raised, and I think I've been, I say privileged, and I've worked hard enough to be able to have some really amazing moments in my career. And I think that I approached a time when I was 27, which I'll obviously go into a bit more later, that I just always have this connection to my community. And I basically use my skills within the creative industry and just like life skills that I learned within my household and like my network. And yeah, I'm pouring back with Safe House. So finding balance between love and money is one that has its moments across like through different scenarios, through different opportunities that have come my way. But I feel like now I'm more strong than ever in knowing where to say yes and where to say no to particular opportunities.
Great, and yeah, great, and look forward to hearing a bit more about that, as you say. But really great to have you involved. Mervyn, I know you've come a long way, or you're coming a long way over the powers of the internet to be with us this morning. Yeah, tell everyone a little bit about yourself.
So good day, everyone. It's a real pleasure to be here and to be speaking on the panel with these distinguished individuals. I am Mervyn Azeta, and I currently work with a company called SLB. For some of you probably recognize the company as Schlumberger. We're no longer Schlumberger, we're now SLB, and we've evolved from being a global oil field company to a global technology company that's now driving energy innovation for a balanced planet. What that means is we're going beyond just oil and gas and really creating innovative technologies for as many industries that are reliant on energy, and ensuring that we keep purpose and profits, balanced. And for me, that is something that I've always looked out for in terms of deciding which job or which career, which opportunity I wanted to take on. It informed my choice of joining SLB. And as you would know, contrary to the belief about millennials or Gen Zs trying to jump from jobs to job or hopping from jobs to job, I've been in my job or in this company for 12 plus years. And that's because it was clear to me what was important when I was joining the company at the start of my career. I've often seen work as an interplay between profit and purpose, or love and money, as you call it on this panel. And I did not see any of those delineated in any way. Although it's a balancing act, like you've heard from everyone else, it takes a lot of thinking, reflecting, a lot of self-reflection, deep introspection every step of the way. So for every career, every opportunity that I've taken on whilst in this company, I've always thought about what was important for me. And I always wanted to make sure that I kept the intrinsic rewards above the extrinsic. For me, it was important that I'm getting fulfillment and satisfaction. My well-being, my motivation is at a higher level, rather than what I'm getting in terms of the external rewards, or like profits or allowance or benefits. As long as I'm getting a sense of fulfillment from what I'm doing, then I'm good. Do I need more money? Of course, we always want more money. Even people who are wealthy want to have more. But as long as that money I'm getting can take care of me, can fund some of the things I'm doing for community, for family, then I'm good. So I'm happy to talk about this a lot more and share even some personal stories as we go along.
Thank you so much, Mervyn. Really, really fascinating. I think that leads very naturally on to a couple of our kind of follow-up questions. But before we do, let's hear from Maya.
Hey everyone, my name's Maya. Really nice to be here. Thanks so much for your time. I run a youth organisation called Career Accelerator, helping young people from diverse and underserved backgrounds to prepare for professional careers through mentoring and work placements. I started the organisation after university, been running it for the last 6-7 years. We currently work with 20 corporates, 30 schools and 10 universities. And in terms of my relationship with love and work, luckily at the moment, 6-7 years down the line, I'm in a nice situation. I'm really passionate about the topic around the role of business in society, social impact. I'm lucky because my job is literally connecting young people up, youth organizations up and businesses up. So I've had a very positive experience and super happy to talk about starting business, working with different stakeholders and my candid thoughts.
Brilliant. I mean, I think we would never have long enough to kind of get the full benefit of all your collected experiences. But what we're going to try and do in the next half an hour or so is bring people into the conversation who feel that they kind of most want to contribute to some of the different questions. And I think some of these themes have already been touched on. My sense listening to kind of many of you is that you were pretty conscious pretty early on that kind of purpose and values were important in some of your choices. But I'd love to hear from a couple of you, maybe those who have had different experiences of that. At what stage did you become aware that kind of values were important in your career decision making? Or was that just, you know, that in your kind of DNA from the outset? Was that something that came slightly later in life? And kind of, sort of how the implications then for some of the choices that you subsequently made. Anyone who'd like to take that kind of first? Yeah, Masruba.
I think it was ingrained, maybe because of my lived experiences, maybe because of how I've grown up. So my background, I'm Bangladeshi and I wasn't born in London. So when we moved here, I was only 6 and I didn't speak English at all. So I think it was being kind of dropped in a different country, having to learn from the get-go, and then also knowing the other side of your family back home who have a different life opportunities to you, and you've got this huge array of opportunities in London, etc. And so I think growing up is one piece, but then going into education and then having a really huge kind of, you know, education being like the biggest thing for which was kind of stamped on me to be good at and be educated because you've been afforded this great opportunity. I think studying sociology and getting to grips about how the world works, the reality of work, from racism, sexism, all the isms, privilege, and the dynamics of the real world. I think that then triggered me to think about actually when I'm out of education and what am I actually going to be doing that has at least a a drop in the ocean that makes a change. I might not be making a huge monumental change, but where possible, where can I slot myself into careers that aren't, that not vapid isn't the right word, but I personally can't be in a role where I'm just doing it just to clock in and clock out, and it's just for the paycheck. Paycheck is obviously very important. It's how we all live. But there have been times where if I've teeter-totted into like the other direction of something that's not impactful, that I've felt a bit stagnant and not very fulfilled. And then that meant I had to swing myself in the other direction again and make sure that I'm aligning myself in the right way.
Thanks, Masruba. Anyone else like to add to that?
My experience is pretty much similar to Masruba's, right? So it was ingrained in me based on the fact that I had parents who were working and also very conscious about the fact that they had to keep both, factors balanced in their lives, making sure that in spite of the fact that they're getting money from work and putting food on our table, they also needed to be serving others, like serving communities, serving, even if it's in the church or, in the community, they were doing something for the good of others. So I grew up seeing that happen with my parents, and it was something that I also had to embody and live out as an individual. But then I had several experiences growing up as well. And one particular one that informed how I live and how I made choices about what I wanted to study and where I wanted to work was at the age of 8 when I was growing up, and I'd been invited to spend some time with one of my aunts. And I went to spend Christmas with her that holiday period. And she was pregnant at the time and was due for delivery. So she had gone in to have a baby, but never came back because she passed due to a power outage. And that obviously triggered a lot of questions in my mind. Being a curious child, being someone who was always seeking ways to solve problems, to address the concerns of people around me, around, the community where I was living or schooling, I wanted to fix that problem. I wanted to understand what power outage was, why we had that situation. And for many of you who may have come from a developing economy or country, you know that energy access is still a big deal. Today, there's still many people who do not have access to energy. And so for me, that was something I wanted to address. I identified it as a problem for the nation, and more so for the continent and even the world at large. And it was something that I really wanted to work at. And so every single thing that I did following that experience made sure that I kept those two things at the back of my mind. So I'm going to try to get money, but I'm going to make sure that I'm able to solve some of these challenges that I've identified, including the challenge of having more women in some of these disciplines, especially STEM disciplines, who can now address these problems. Because I know I cannot do it alone. I need an army. And to get that army, we need to equip, we need to empower, we need to support them along the way. So all of that informed everything that I did, including getting into SLB. I was mindful of the fact that SLB was a company that would afford women to be empowered and to thrive and to solve problems in the industry or in the countries that they come from. And so it was constantly at the back of my mind, everything that I did, including when I got a scholarship to go study at Imperial. So I got a presidential scholarship to study up to PhD level in any of the top 25 universities in the world. I got into Imperial, supported by my company, because at the time I was leaving SLB to go study, I was barely 3 years in the company. And typically by policy, you are not eligible for a leave to go and study unless you've spent 5 years in the company. I had just done 3 years. And so I said, I needed to go. And I needed to go because I wanted to learn more about the energy transition, what was happening in terms of the development of the energy industry. I wanted to be at the forefront of solving some of the challenges, whether it's technology, whether it's policy, whether it's business. So thinking about even coming back to support my company in that transition to being the forerunner or being at the forefront of driving innovation. And I was told, we can't really give you a leave because of the fact that the policy said this, but we know that you're a talent and we want you to come back. So we're going to go against our own policy. And so they gave me an educational leave and I went out, right? So I got into Imperial, I was doing a number of exciting things. I was getting exposure. I was named Future Energy Leader whilst working at Imperial. I was getting a lot of like attention and opportunities to do something even more. I got offers, like really juicy offers from some organizations. And when I mean juicy, I mean a lot of money, right? I could get much more than what I was earning at the time in SLB. But being someone who had known and had clarity on my values, on my purpose in life, which I connect again to that experience I had at the age of 8, right? And understanding that there were some things that were priority for me, I turned a lot of those juicy offers down. And I returned to SLB again in line with my values. One of the reasons I returned to SLB was because as a Christian or a person of faith, I needed to live daily by my faith. Living my values daily was very important for me. So regardless of what was being offered to me, keeping that at the back of my mind, I would not accept the jobs. Secondly, I knew that the company had taken a chance on me because they identified me as a talent. They identified me as someone who could bring a lot of value, both to the company, to the community, to the world at large of the industry. And I did not want to ruin that opportunity for somebody else who may be coming. So I thought about the people coming behind me. Remember, for everything I was doing, I was constantly thinking about how to create an army or even create a pool of more people who could be like me, who could be solving problems for the world. And so I was very mindful of the fact that I didn't want to ruin the opportunity for those people, because if I had not gone back to SLB, in spite of the fact that they've done what they shouldn't have done, broken their policy, even paid me stipends when I did not need their money because I had a presidential scholarship anyways. They kept an opening for me to come back in spite of a downturn. That was a year where the industry had gone really bad and they were laying off lots of people, but they kept an opening for me to come back after my master's to get into the company. So for me, I saw all of those things as a lot of investment in me, and I did not want a situation where somebody who was even younger, who may have been even more talented or more intelligent, would have such an opportunity to go and study, but would not be considered because I had screwed things up, excuse my French. So I was mindful of that and made sure that regardless of what was offered, regardless of the money, regardless of the profits I could earn from taking any of those job offers, I kept my values aligned and I returned to the company. Today, I'm responsible for shaping the culture of the company. What that tells me is that it's always very important to keep, your values aligned. Always very important to be aware of what your values are. I think it's important to have that clarity and to make sure that that informs your decisions as you go along the way. The money is coming now. I can do anything I want to do. I can fly to any country I want to go to. I can invest in anything I want to invest in. I can make a difference in the lives of several thousands of employees in the organization while still living by my values.
Probably the only word that comes to mind is kind of wow. There's such kind of a sense of kind of leadership that comes through you so strongly. It's really kind of inspiring to kind of listen. And there's some themes emerging from those focus so far around kind of the importance of those formative kind of experiences in shaping those kind of values. But anyone else have any different experience that maybe they came to those kind of realizations later in life, or actually they want to amplify what Master Ruba and Mervyn have shared so far? Anyone else want to come in on that?
Yeah, I don't mind. I think for me, from being a law student, I think also going through 2 years of COVID, so most of my degree was at home by the computer, I definitely realized early on, especially in second year, that I didn't actually want to go down the typical route of corporate law and being in that quite competitive environment. I know a lot of people enjoy it and they enjoy obviously the money from it, but for me, I think I decided early on that I can't do those applications, when they would ask, so why do you want to join the law firm, I would just say, oh, I just want the salary, which I don't think is a good idea for joining a law firm. So I think I decided early on that I definitely wanted to be in a role that had, impact. I was looking at roles where, impact investing and ESG, corporate governance, which I did an internship in, and learning how at a business level, in the board of directors, within the company, that corporate level, you can definitely make a difference from the top down instead of the bottom up. And I think through job hunting and seeing what experience was needed, what these companies were looking for, obviously at the time I didn't have it. And it was quite disheartening in the beginning because I did know the values that I wanted and the type of job that I wanted. But because of the experience, the lack of experience that I had, obviously I wasn't able to do that at the time. And I think with the role that I have now, I think as I've grown up and as I've matured, I've definitely realized that I'm gaining skills that hopefully I can use for a role that is more impact-led, that is more able to impact people's lives in a different way that I would want to. So I think just learning that the stage that you are in now, you have to learn something from it, because that is what's going to help you be in the role or be in the position that you're actually meant to be in. So I think for me, it was definitely something that I've always wanted to do. It was in my personal statement of wanting to study law. Being in an impactful role is something that I've always desired, and I definitely won't stop desiring it, even though I'm in a role that is not really like that at this current time. But yeah, I think impact and having that is something that I definitely don't want to lose just because I'm earning money and just because I know I can give to charities on the side. It's something that I know I want to be at the forefront of the career that I do, essentially.
Thanks, Sarah. And Taryn, I wanted to bring you in at this point, because you mentioned something interesting earlier around sort of the opportunities within kind of commercial organizations and commercial roles for those who either already know they hold those strong values or, discover that. And I would say, just to kind of maybe offer a kind of a slightly balancing view, I had a strong sense when I graduated I wanted to do work that was interesting to me, but certainly doing good for other people wasn't kind of high in my priority list. And, much of my 20s and kind of early 30s was about kind of, discovering myself and trying to just find my feet in the world and find where I fit. And it was almost, I guess it was kind of an iterative process where I woke up, sort of, I think we've got some exceptional people on this panel who maybe were very conscious very early around kind of values and the importance of purpose in their work. For me, it was more incremental. It took into my 30s that maybe when I was kind of more settled in some ways and more kind of comfortable in myself, that I was able to open up more to what I could do for other people. And I then kind of, I guess my path took a different direction. So just to offer, a different lens that, it obviously has a huge amount of power if you have that clarity early on, but it's not necessarily the case that everyone can or should kind of have that clarity that these amazing people do. But Taryn, let's bring you in.
Yeah, very happy to. I mean, obviously we've just heard some really inspiring stories of people that have had life experiences and gone through challenges that have really helped them develop a really strong view on their life purpose, which is incredible. And for anyone that's listening into this call that's in the same boat, that will really resonate with you. But there may well be others on this call that haven't gone through those incredible experiences and are thinking, is this still right for me? And I suppose if I can offer you a bit of comfort and if I can defend corporate law a little bit, there is some value that can be added within all of those things. So you're absolutely right. These things can come to you at different stages in your life, but equally, there are lots of different ways to add value. We've heard some really inspiring stories about seeing personal impact and making change and wanting to be a force for change as part of that. But I think one of the other things that goes without saying in some ways, one of the best ways to make change is to make change from a position of power, because the strength that you have, the ability to influence others is massive. Thinking about the work that I do, of course, I do lots of large transactions, but equally I've done cases that have gone all the way up to the Supreme Court and actually changed the law. The power to do that is in the hands of a very small number of people, and getting towards the top of a profession like one in law or medicine or any of the other things that you're all studying and focusing on really gives you that ability to change law. I've worked with governments and policymakers to help develop new law. Outside of my core practice as a lawyer, I sit and I'm on the Law Society's Employment Law Committee. So I sit as part of the Law Society helping to shape and guide governments and other regulators through the impact of policy decisions, the impact on employment, or the impact on people's personal lives. And equally, as I say, there is always the opportunity within organizations like large law firms to do really impactful pro bono work. Naturally, a lot of my work focuses on my core expertise and using the skills and experience that I've built up to help others that are not in a position to be able to get that advice directly. But I know my firm does a lot of work with large human rights charities doing death row cases around the world, trying to prevent what we might see as being antiquated practices and serious potential miscarriages of justice, to try and really, again, utilize the skills and experience that you've been able to build up and bring the power that you have as an advocate, as a leader, to help bring about positive change. And then equally, even if you're not in that position where you're thinking, well, I'm not going to be a lawyer or a doctor, I'm not going to invent some new vaccine or change the law. Again, you don't have to have anything that big. You can be the person that asks those difficult questions around the leadership table in any company you're in. Is it right that our board looks like this? Is it right that we're making these hiring decisions? Have we thought about X? Have we considered the impact of Y? I always go back to the smallest things can make huge impacts. When I was at Deliveroo, and everyone will be familiar with what it does and its business model. I remember one of the most impactful things that we did as a business actually just came as an idea from someone relatively junior in the organization that just said, we do all this stuff about ESG things. What if we just made cutlery opt-in? So you didn't automatically, every time you ordered food on Deliveroo, get a knife, a fork, a chopsticks, all this plastic waste. How much would we reduce the world's carbon footprint by just making you have to press a button in the app to say, I need cutlery because I'm somewhere where I'm not at home or in an office where I've got all of that available to me. Just the impact of something so small from anyone within an organization everyone can sit around the table and think, we would never have thought about that. It's such a good idea. It's actually going to make such a big impact and it can influence such a big change around the world. There is a huge amount of value to be added in almost any type of organization or professional context that you might go into. So don't feel necessarily, albeit everyone's doing some incredibly valuable things around this table, and I don't, obviously, if that is the way you are minded, that is an incredible thing to do, but you can do it within a wider realm of your professional capacity.
Thanks, Taryn. And just one thing I was going to ask to build on that was, I guess we've seen over the past, sort of good few years, the rise of employee staff networks, internal advocacy. You mentioned a few examples of change within. For anyone who's experience of working within larger organizations, do you have any reflections on the opportunities and value of participating in those networks and the opportunities to I guess make genuine change from within? You would like to go first on that? I see a few nods around the virtual table.
I don't know if someone else that hasn't spoken wants to jump in on that, but I'm very happy to if not.
Go ahead, Taryn, for now, and then we'll bring everyone else in. There's a follow-up question I think which will be interesting for some of our other panelists, but be great just to build on that while we're here.
Very quickly, because I'm very conscious I don't want to dominate the discussion. There are other people with really important insights to share, but I think the world has changed so much, and the idea that decisions are only taken by a C-suite is long consigned to the history books. I think people are, in most organizations, I'm not going to say every organization, there will be exceptions to this rule, but most organizations understand that good ideas, that change comes from throughout the organization. And there are so many forums now in which you can make your views known, share insights, share ideas, share experience. And businesses are keen to learn from that and show and live their corporate values such that you can have a real impact. And, I've given some examples, but there will be loads more, I'm sure, from others around the panel. around the impact that you can have in a range of different positions and really be in the driving seat of corporate strategy. I'll hand over. I can see a hand up.
I wanted to add, so in our organization, and in a number of organizations which are quite large as well, there are ERGs, employee resource groups, that you can join. So here at Havas, we've got 4 at the minute. So one being Pride for LGBT plus community, Adapt, which is for our neurodiverse and disability community. We've got Women of Havas, which is our gender ERG, and Embrace, our race and ethnicity. The way that they work, they're all completely employee led. There aren't any kind of, it's not a C-suite level person that runs it. The chairs themselves are appointed, and they have a job role per se. It's voluntary, but they have a kind of terms of reference to follow. And they each have their own actions and set goals for what they're going to achieve by being in that ERG, with the main output being that it's impactful for the community that they're serving. So each of the representative 4. But also a huge caveat is that you don't have to have lived experience of that ERG community. You can also be a great ally and learn a massive amount and be quite informed, because you can be an ally and you could have people in your team that are from that community, and that's a really great source of kind of support that you can draw from. And it's not always, usually it's geared towards kind of the events and celebratory things, but it's also around creating meaningful change, updating our policies, making sure that it's representative for all the communities, and taking into account the individual differences. Especially in just recent days, a lot of kind of considerations for neurodiverse and neurodiversity and different learning styles have been coming up. So it's always great because they have their finger on the pulse, and they're really great to kind of tap into as well for advice and guidance when it comes to updating our policies.
Yeah, thanks very much, Masruba. And just to bring Priscilla and Maya in potentially, I guess I was interested to hear from you guys. Obviously, you've both taken sort of an entrepreneurial path, or in part an entrepreneurial path, coming from kind of sort of different backgrounds. How has an awareness of your sense of purpose informed the choices that you've made, and has that led to any kind of tougher trade-offs as you try to balance that equation of kind of meaning and money? Maybe Priscilla, if I start with you, and then I'll come on to you, Maya.
Yeah, sure. So I have always had, I think my family has quite a creative background. It's creative / business. And I think that in my earlier stage of life, I've had a huge curiosity of human behavior, how we interact with one another, how we express ourselves, and somebody who almost had like a cultural shock when I entered the working world, even as in the fashion world, shall I say. I studied fashion management and marketing, and the type of modules we were doing were very different to what I'd experienced, I say, per A-levels and in secondary school. So yeah, like I said, I was kind of like on my journey discovering what it is that I wanted to do. I didn't kind of have, I just knew it was definitely connected to fashion and music. And I think it was mainly because of the idea of expression. That was like my tool, being a shy young person. And then I accidentally fell into the PR and marketing world through an internship I did through my second year. And that opened up a world of opportunities for me. PR is not like just one thing that you do. There's everything from event management to press release writing to organizational skills that you develop to, encountering and liaising with stylists, journalists, and so on and so forth. So these are the skills that I was kind of like developing through this role per se. And then I was invited back to do a graduate scheme. And then I was like, actually, you know what? I think these are really leaning towards the things that I want to do, is essentially socialize and engage and work with others. So alongside this, I was also youth leader at my church, my local church. And I was working with a small group of people, maybe about 10 of us. And I think that what I was kind of noticing was this this confliction between the love and passion I had for like my career path, also knowing that there was something that was connecting this way in terms of like leadership, helping young people. And this was a skill that's kind of like innately just developing inside of me. So I reached 27 and I remember I was working for a celebrity and he was starting off a brand and I was working in-house, and it was really great because I was able to see like from production right through to development. And yeah, it was a great opportunity. But I had this light bulb moment where I felt that I wanted to do more from where I was from. I kind of like reached a point where I feel like I've done everything I needed to. I've explored enough, or I've reached a ceiling point in my career, and I wanted to kind of pour back into where I came from. So I started Safe House, and to say like it was a smart choice at this time, I don't know, because there's so many hurdles and challenges I faced from starting a CIC. A CIC is a community interest company, and this is a newer model as opposed to, you know, larger charities that exist. So along the way, once again, I'm learning how these institutions, how things I had no experience prior. So I think that what I've learned is that now obviously we are registered, and I've had to manage a team of 10 volunteers. And now going into we're now exploring infrastructure and like having a permanent premises. So it's kind of like, I don't want to say it just kind of happened, but I once again had to make particular choices along the way about where like my values lied. And, you know, some of them were very more harder than others in terms of like, okay, there's an opportunity that's come by that's paying really well. But then I know that, okay, I probably will benefit from my organization long term. So it may not be like within the first 5, not even 10 years, but it could be the next 20, or, you know, my children or my siblings may be able to take on Safe House in the future. And that's part of like the long-term goal of how I see things now, as opposed to, I guess growing up, I was very much like in the moment, what's fun, what's good now. And I guess now at 33, I think more long-term about, my options and my choices. So I think that the deciding factor happened through like, I guess through adversity. So through like probably something to do with work, I should say, a factor of different things or challenges I was facing. I couldn't quite open the ceiling anymore to how I can like develop myself. And I thought, well, let me lean into this, take on a new challenge. And here I am still after 5 years. So yeah.
Thanks, Vasela. Maya, do you wanna kind of come in at that point?
Yeah, sure thing. Those are 3 very big questions. In terms of values and where I got my fire, I think that stemmed from childhood. Growing up, I attended a very homophobic school. I got bullied quite badly. When I was 15 or 16, I ended up dropping out. My mental health was in quite a bad place. So when I got to my 20s and I had a bit more power and influence, I thought to myself, I couldn't really help myself when I was a teenager, but it was a no-brainer. Why wouldn't I try and spend a few years of my 20s trying to make things a bit better for younger generations and more diverse generations? So I think that was where a lot of my motivation came from. In terms of who I was always very emotional. I was always very sensitive. I always had quite a big heart. So it made sense for me to try out entrepreneurship and try out social enterprise. Worst case scenario, I was 23. I spent a year piloting something. It wouldn't work out. It's not going to be the end of the world. Luckily for me, I piloted with a few schools, a few young people, a few employees. It did work out. I think one reason I tend to be very optimistic and happy is that most well-adjusted, nice people aren't ever going to say no to volunteer or being a mentor. And the more people you talk to and the more work you do, the easier it is to get 10, 20, 30, 40K partnerships from corporates. I didn't feel I had too much of a hard path. Initially, maybe in the first year or so, it was tricky and lonely, but I work hard. I don't think what I'm doing is rocket science. So I think those were my motivations and values, and that's why I was so fiery about the issues I'm addressing and tackling. In terms of your second part of your question about my journey, has it always been kind of smooth sailing? How has my values aligned to the work? I think, like a lot of panelists said, there are going to be some trade-offs. The first few years, they were quite lonely, they were quite isolating. A lot of people don't have a frame of reference. I wasn't making as much money as I could have made. However, 5, 6, 7 years down the line, things got a lot more stable. One point a few people mentioned was there's always going to be an ongoing relationship between money, love, making an impact. So Matthew, you mentioned in your 20s you were focusing on doing interesting work, building your profile, and then 30s onwards you started focusing more on giving back and being a leader. For me, it was the other way around. My 20s was very much about giving back to the community. I think over the next 5, 10 years, I might have a career change and I might choose to focus more on corporate or work within businesses. But those would be my initial thoughts.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. And just while we've got you, I know that you've done quite a few fascinating kind of programs. I saw in your bio that you've done kind of Year Here, I think it was, and you've also been through sort of business school. I just wondered if you and any other panelists with experience of that could talk about, let's say you are someone who's looking to experiment and explore with doing your own thing or doing your own thing alongside other kind of work. What are some of the kind of the organizations or the type of thing that's been helpful to you in kind of I guess kind of maybe focusing in on what you want to be doing and what your kind of purpose is, but also how to put some form around that and how to kind of shape something that has the potential to kind of sustain itself and earn money as well.
Yeah, sure thing. Don't mind following up on that. Obviously, I run a mentoring organization, so my boring advice will be find people who've done what you want to do. I learned very quickly that what I'm doing around mentoring, outreach, connecting people up, it's not rocket science. It relies on being a nice person, being passionate. I think a lot of businesses thought that what I was doing was good work. They had the money and their employees wanted to get involved. So my first bit of advice is find people who have done what you want to do, emulate it from them, learn from them directly. Most people wouldn't mind giving you some time and supporting you, especially if you're doing a good thing. The second thing to say, I would say, is be patient and be humble. One of my favorite quotes is, people overestimate what they can do in a year, they underestimate what they can do in 10 years. And I think that's so true. When I started my organization, we work with 10 kids in year 1, 30 kids in year 2, 100 kids in year 3. Now we work with around 300, 400 young people. It's not because I've suddenly started working really hard. It's just these things take a while. And my advice is, if you are going to start a social enterprise, a business, a charity, it's probably only going to be 5, 10 years till you actually have a strong foundation and it's sustainable. And then the third thing to say is, like you mentioned, leverage leadership programs. Leverage programs out there. No one has a monopoly on doing good. I've learned from some great charity entrepreneurs and social entrepreneurs. I've learned from some really good partners in law firms and consulting firms and senior leaders. I think the more great people you have around you, the easier it is to get pumped up, to get excited, and to get good training and support. And the last thing I'd say is, I think business is all about relationships and friendships. That's what I found. The older I get, the more chilled I get, and the more confident I get with networking. And that's often what grows partnerships, and that's often what drives impact.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you, mate. That's so much wisdom kind of sort of within that. Lots to kind of reflect on, and I guess a little kind of plug for what we're going to do in a minute, and get into potentially into some smaller groups where you have the opportunity to meet with each other, meet with our panelists, and to start to build some relationships. That really is the kind of the lifeblood of any sort of career exploration, whether that's sort of learning from others, forming relationships, and forming kind of partnerships with people who can then link you to other opportunities. So definitely sort of endorse that as something to make the most of in this kind of interaction. Just one question that actually came to me while you were speaking, Mayor, and just want to open this up to the floor. Many of you have taken sort of I guess very kind of explicitly kind of purpose-led kind of approaches. Some of you still at a relatively early stages in your career. I just wondered your reflections on sort of how you felt versus some of your peers. So Mary, I know for your bio, you've been to top kind of business school. Zara, you studied kind of law obviously at Queen Mary as well. Just kind of whether it has any bearing on your choices, or you faced any kind of challenges or discomfort in terms of being on potentially a different trajectory or a different path to some of your peers. Anyone happy to speak to that?
Yeah, I don't mind. I think for me, as you said, I studied law. I was around law students, Queen Mary, Ross Group University. Also went to a grammar school for the whole 7 years of my secondary education. So I was always surrounded by more people that would prefer to be on like the profit side of their career, wanted to be lawyers, wanted to be actuaries, wanted to be high earning people. There wasn't really much of an impact led. I know a lot of people, they did want to do work within their organization or work within their universities, and that's all credit to them. But I think the impact led, that was part of the main part of their career, I wasn't seeing that as much. So I think for me, and that's no fault to them, I think I was sometimes when I would compare myself to others, especially when I wasn't working, when I was job hunting, there was a lot of, oh, Zara, why are you trying to go into ESG and corporate governance when you should, like, you've got a law degree, you should try and be a lawyer, you should try and do something that's very high earning. And I think once I started seeing more people in the career that I wanted to, or hopefully would like to get to in the future, I think just showed to me like you can have both, but most importantly, you can be impact led, you can be somebody that drives for change and that also drives other people for change around you. You know, you might be in a career that other people aren't, that your friends aren't in, but it might help them to realize that, wow, you're doing something that's great. Maybe I could actually try and take a leap in my own organization, as Taryn said, or be an entrepreneur as Bisola and Maya are, and as Maya are, sorry. And I think also inspire other people around you, not just the children or the young adults that you're working with, but also your peers around you. So I think for me, it's definitely been a challenge of looking and comparing myself to other people, but also knowing that I'm only 22, I only graduated 2 years ago. So I think there's still a long way to go, hopefully.
Yeah, thanks, Sarah, for being so honest about that. Anyone else want to speak to that point?
I don't mind going. Yeah, I think I entered the fashion industry at a time where I don't think many people understood like PR and marketing at that time. Or my friends didn't really understand what my role, even my family had to like struggle to understand because no 2 day was the same. And then when I actually entered the job and actually noticing how much admin was necessary, just the different things that I would do in a day, and I take it back to my friends. To one side, when we had the events, it was always that, yeah, great. But when actually the hard work and the graft was taking place, it was almost where you didn't really have many people around. So I think having an outlet to talk about the challenges in work, I could only do it with my colleagues and my peers, which is also difficult because it's a very fast-paced environment. But I suppose, in entrepreneurship, as it's been mentioned prior, it's a very lonely space. I have like great mentors and business coaches along the way, but there are a lot of times, especially because not many people can see the idea as clear as you can. So there is a lot of like self-resilience, self-motivation, and self-development that takes place, it can be very, very difficult at times. But I suppose that, yeah, I've developed, or I've actually recognized how disciplined and tenacious I am. So yeah, there's a lot of like personal and self-reflective parts. And I'm also a person that's actually like, I'm really for like growth and challenge. I love a challenge, like throw it at me, let's go. But there are times where it doesn't feel as like easy as that to wake up in the morning and goes, all right, I have to drive my to-do list today. I have to, I'm the leader of how my day pans out. So yeah, in terms of like having the support there, and then it comes and it goes. But I think it's a difficult one because obviously life has its circumstances. People have their own lives as well. But in terms of, yeah, having the support, it does come in, it comes in and go. But I always just say that help is always provided along the way. There are times where like I felt that there's been no one, and the next day I get an email or I get a phone call. So yeah, it does change. It changes, sorry.
Yeah, thanks, Priscilla. Anyone want to chip in on that before I come to our last question for this piece? No? Okay. I mean, just to add something for myself, actually, I remember even sort of in, so I also went to a kind of a Russell Group kind of uni, and I remember sort of, I was drawn to kind of more entrepreneurial environments, and for yeah, definitely for the first kind of few years of my career, even though I was doing really interesting work and getting probably a lot more responsibility and working on interesting sort of projects, more so than some of my peers who were going through graduate programs or more sort of conventional routes. I always remember kind of having that feeling that, you know, maybe I ought to be doing something, you know, sort of a bit more blue chip, a bit more proper. And it took me in fact, it was only when I actually got to kind of, you know, see that world from the inside that I kind of got rid of that. So I really related to what you were talking about, Zara, and applaud your kind of courage in being able to not be swayed by that, and taking leadership so young, in being a positive kind of influence on that, because I know that was kind of in my space, as a kind of, you know, as a recent graduate, that feeling that, you know, even though I'm happy with what I'm doing, you know, when I start to compare myself, I'm like, well, you know, it looks like on the surface of it, people are kind of further ahead or doing kind of better because they've got more kind of classic, sort of good jobs. So hopefully some encouragement from the panel that, well, whichever route you take, you can kind of find that kind of purpose and find those opportunities. But equally, if you want to take a path that's kind of slightly less traveled, that you know, you shouldn't be afraid to do it. And in fact, sort of that your 20s are a great time to kind of experiment and kind of explore, and you can always come back to something that maybe is more remunerative, sort of later on, if that's the journey for you. So final question for the panel, and then we're going to sort of break everyone out into two groups, so a bit more intimate gatherings where you can kind of discuss and reflect on what you've been hearing. If you haven't already kind of mentioned it, any kind of advice that you'd give to anyone sort of navigating, as we heard at the intro, further study choices or choices between study and work, or navigating their career choices. We'll make this fairly quick fire. So we'll just go around, hear one from anyone who'd like to go for it. Yeah, kind of one piece of advice for the audience, maybe thinking of your kind of your younger self, even if it's not much younger self. I'll start with you, Mervyn.
So I would say, you know, learn to pass whatever work you get, whatever career you have, through the cost benefit test for fulfillment, for feeling alive, for satisfaction. And if that work or career passes the test, then great for you. If it comes along with a lot of pay, even greater. Because as a matter of fact, I think of pay or benefits or money like eating and sleeping for your health. You can sleep and eat good for your health, but if you overdo it, it can be harmful to you. If you seek money more than fulfillment, if you seek money more than, you know, your satisfaction, your happiness, your feeling alive, it could drown out those things that make your life worthwhile. And if you focus too much on it, you know, bad things can happen to you. You become poorer, you become unhealthier. I've read about a number of stories of people who sought for money. They wanted to be at the top of their career. They wanted to reach the zenith. And at the end of the day, they lost a lot of things in terms of their family, in terms of their joy, in terms of their happiness. They commit suicide, you know, they die unfulfilled. But there are those who constantly keep both of them, you know, in view, and they live a fulfilling life. They could even be Uber drivers and still have a better life and have all the love and all the happiness that they can get in the world and die fulfilled. So it's always important to keep those things at the back of your mind. And I'll leave you with a very good book that I found recently valuable. It's the book titled Build the Life You Want by Arthur C. Brooks and Oprah Winfrey. I'd encourage you to read that book.
Thanks, Mervyn. Brilliant. If you can put it in a chat, that would be amazing. Maya.
Yeah.
Thanks so much. My key takeaways would be, it doesn't matter what you do as long as you're good at it. I think I might have stolen that from Obama, but I think as long as you have a skill set and you're useful, the world's your oyster. So it doesn't matter if you work for a small organization or a large organization. If you add value, that's going to be great. Secondly, I would say build a good professional network, be around nice, genuine, hardworking people with integrity. It'll make all the difference. And lastly, being happy and have fun and enjoying your career is really important. Yeah, your 20s is good for building a career. It's also good for traveling and meeting people. And you should also enjoy your career. It's not so black and white.
Persona.
I would say concentrate on your character. I think it's something that travels with you throughout your whole life, and with the relationships that you develop with other people, it's very important to just concentrate on self. Stay true and be kind. Be kind as often as you can, even through the most difficult of challenges that people may project onto you. Push back, keep on going.
All right.
Yeah, I think I would agree. I think I would say be patient in every obstacle or any season that you're in, and just take what you can from it. I think, as Vasola said, also just focus on being a good person. Make sure that your heart doesn't change, your values don't change along the way, especially if you're around other people. So yeah, I would say be patient and stay true to who you are.
Right.
I think that was me. I think a lot of really good points have been made already. Just so I can say something different to what has been said before, I think I might just offer. I don't think there is any. It's an old cliche. There's no such thing as bad experience. Just go through, take risks, take chances. You will learn from opportunities, even if you end up in a career that isn't down the exact path of where you want to go. You will learn so much from that about what motivates you, about what you enjoy, what you don't enjoy, that you'll be able to take into the next thing, and you'll be all the better for it.
That's Rupa.
Say you don't have to have the rest of your life planned out right now. You could not have imagined all of the things that we've experienced. We didn't know we were going to go through a pandemic. We're in cost of living. We're in a recession again. When I was a student, we were in a recession. So it's just all come around full circle. All of the great things, all of the worst things can happen that you can't even predict or imagine. So give yourself grace that you don't have to have the whole path created and planned out to the T.
Thanks, guys. Really, yeah, so much wisdom contained within that. So I hope, sort of many of those points are kind of heard and understood. What we're going to do now is we're going to take 10 minutes. We're going to split the group in two. So there's going to be 3 panelists in each kind of breakout room. I'm going to give you 2 questions to kind of ponder and respond to in your group. I'd really request that you put your cameras on if you possibly can when you go into the group, and be ready and kind of willing to share. Appreciate there may be some exceptional circumstances, but just out of courtesy to our panel, I'd really request that you do that and you'll get the most out of it, not least because you will then be able to form some relationships with those peers and panelists in your group that you can potentially follow up on afterwards. The 2 questions I'd like you to kind of respond to when you get into your groups, as well as any questions that you have for the panel. One is, what's been the most kind of interesting or inspiring thing that you've heard so far this afternoon? You've got a very difficult choice to make, but what's been one thing that's really stood out to you from what you've heard this afternoon? And the second thing is, what's the implication for your career thinking, for your choices where you are right now? What's the implications for you wherever you're at in your journey? So Natalie, if you just want to kind of let us know when you're ready to kind of send us off. We'll come back just a couple of minutes before 5:30 just to kind of wrap up, and we'll give you sort of a couple of minutes notice when you do, but we've got kind of just under 10 minutes to do that. So just really encourage you to think about your reflections and any other questions you had, and make the very best use having these amazing people sort of in your company. How are we doing, Natalie?
Yeah, I can do that now. So I'll just assign everyone now.
Perfect. So if you have the odd sensation of being whisked into some unexpected virtual arena, don't worry, that's all part of the plan. And if anything goes wrong, just kind of log back into the main link, and we can kind of reassign you, and then we'll get everyone back here just for a few minutes before 5:30. Natalie, if you just shout when people are whisking away, so they know what's happening.
Yeah.
If anyone has any questions they want to put in the chat while we're waiting, please feel free to do so. And thanks to Aya and Mervyn for putting the book recommendation. Always good to come away with a good reading recommendation from these events. But thank you for those.
I'm gonna send you all now.
Well done, Natalie. I think we've still just got Maria with us.